Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Mike. I'm the Senior Project Coordinator here at BlueDAG. Nice to meet everyone, um, and welcome. Today, Lisa will be going over projects, grievances, and transition plans in our fourth episode in the series. And please feel free to use our chat and Q&A features throughout the presentation. And let's get started.
Welcome everyone to our fourth and final webinar in our ADA 101 web series. This webinar is going to cover projects, grievances, and your transition plan. So let's start off with just stating what the law states. So in 28 CFR 35-150, the existing facilities, in general, a public entity shall operate each service, program, or activity so that the service, program, or activity, when viewed in its entirety, is readily achievable to and usable by individuals with disabilities. So when it comes to structural issues, how do we implement that? And the law further goes into talk about the transition plan. In the event that structural changes to facilities will be undertaken to achieve program accessibility, a public entity that employs 50 or more persons shall develop within 6 months of January 26, 1992, a transition plan setting forth the steps necessary to complete such changes. A public entity shall provide an opportunity to interested persons, including individuals with disabilities or organizations representing individuals with disabilities, to participate in the development of the transition plan by submitting comments. A copy of the transition plan shall be made available for public inspection. It further goes on to describe the 4 basic principles in which they want in your transition plan. The plan shall, at minimum, identify physical obstacles in the public entity's facilities that limit accessibility of its programs or activities to individuals with disabilities. Describe in detail the methods that will be used to make the facilities accessible. Specify the schedule for taking the steps necessary to achieve compliance with this section, and if time period of that transition plan is longer than 1 year, identify steps that will be taken during each year of the transition period, and indicate the official route responsible for implementation of the plan. So I bet your agency probably did that, probably around 1992. And I bet it looks something like this, a bunch of binders that are sitting in a bookshelf somewhere behind someone's desk. And when asked to present it, it's a matter of picking it up, blowing off the dust, and handing it to someone. So do you know what you've done in response to those findings since 1992? Knowing the status of your identified barriers is as equally as important as identifying them in the first place. So things that are important to remember is that a transition plan is actually a living document. What this means is that it can't just be a snapshot of what it was in 1992. You need to have a consistent snapshot of what is going on in your agency with regards to any barrier that's been identified. That's going to require constant planning and monitoring. As boundaries grow, as issues change, as laws change, as regulations change, so does the need to incorporate acquired facilities and regulations into your transition plan process. So, did you know that dubbed Project Civil Access, the U.S. Department of Justice has beefed up their efforts to ensure that in addition to the private sector, states, counties, cities, towns, and villages also comply with the ADA. To enforce their 25-year-old regulation, the DOJ is conducting regular reviews across the country, leaving no municipality without risk. Compliance review sites are chosen based upon the desire of the DOJ to visit every state, the population of the site, and in some cases, its proximity to a university or tourist attraction. They state that it has nothing to do with grievances or any kind of requests that go to that federal level, but you never know. And I know that as far as requests that go to the DOJ, you're going to be put on their radar. So by July of 2015, the DOJ has reached over 217 settlement agreements since the PCA initiative began in 1991. A majority of the compliance reviews occurred in small cities and towns. What this entails is they'll come in and they will investigate 10% of your municipality. The physical barriers and programmatic barriers, they will come in, they will look at everything. And if they decide that overall your compliance is lacking, they'll basically say you have so many years to not only assess the rest or remaining areas of your municipality, but then also remediate those areas. And then after that, come back in and reevaluate it all. So it's a very costly and procedurally heavy process to do it. And they usually will put a dollar amount in there that's very high and very difficult to manage. So agencies are then are left scrambling, like, how do we do this? Where do we come up with the funds? How do we comply with any of this? And just so you're aware that there's a number of things that they look at, and it's not just old or new construction. It's programs, it's services, activities, and it could be in any one of these programs that they're going to look at. They're going to look at your polling places, your convention centers, your animal resource centers, and so much more. There's no part of your agency that isn't that has any kind of protections. That's free game for them to come in and look at and make sure that you're complying. So we always find that this is where agencies get stuck between a rock and a hard place. You have your repercussions, which could be a lawsuit. It can be a project civic action agreement, federal complaint procedures, federal lawsuits. All of these are very costly solutions to a problem if it's not handled proactively. But you look at compliance, and then you have agencies that are saying we don't have the resources to procure a costly contract to only have a snapshot of what we're doing. Fiscally, we can't fix everything. The ADA isn't respected in our agency. It's constantly an uphill battle. Like, where do I get the money to become compliant? But that also leaves you vulnerable to the other ball dropping. So what happens when you have an identified grievance? Where does that go? What if you can't remediate the issue for several years? Do you have to track it? Well, yeah, you do. And what if you already identified it and it's already on your transition plan? What now? Well, you still have to track and notify the requester of the proposed remediation, and you still have to update your transition plan. So now you have two things that are going on the same area. With all of this information, how can you possibly keep track of it all? This can be double and triple work, and who has time for that? There's other things that you guys are doing for your own agency, let alone having to manage a complete ADA transition plan. But if it's not properly tracked, you can leave yourself vulnerable to lawsuits, project civic access investigations, federal complaint procedures, and more. So this is where we came in with BlueDAG. BlueDAG is a system that has been designed to manage all of your ADA requirements, from a grievance procedure, transition plan, self-evaluation, notice, and all of it works together. So when you see here, this is a project screenshot of what a project actually looks like within the system. And projects can be created, and then they are assigned and put into findings, or I'm sorry, they can be assigned to an evaluation, it can be assigned to a grievance, and they're all connected. So if you update a project, that's going to automatically update and continue the process flow for your evaluation, your transition plan, your grievance, all of that. So if you make a remediation to something that's on your transition plan, but it's also within your grievance, it's also automatically going to notify the requester so that you're not doing double and triple the work. And then as far as evaluations are concerned, they could be assigned or associated with evaluation findings. And with an evaluation, it can encompass several different findings, or it can be just one finding that's associated to a grievance. So you have the flexibility of being able to assign different things to different perspectives, depending upon what your agency needs and what you're doing. So on top of that, what BlueDAG provides you is a link that will look something like this. And if you have a constituent that comes in and wants to know what the status is of your transition plan, what barriers have been identified, what you're doing, what's been remediated, they can actually look at this. This will come up on their screen. They have the table view where they can search, hey, I want to see everything that's a curb ramp, and all the curb ramps will come up, or I want to see accessible routes, or I want to see signage. They can look at all of that, but then they're limited to only the information that you provide them. So what does this have to offer? It has information completed in the system, is then presented for the public to view based on what you want. Grievances that are generated are automatically placed onto the transition plan. If a project has been associated, it can be identified in the online transition plan. So if you have a scheduled project that's coming up in, 6 months and it's out for bid, you can put a column there for your constituents to look at to see, hey, there's a project coming up and I'm going to go check back in 6 months. And that's going to eliminate a lot of the follow-up phone calls that you get from individuals who are like, hey, what's going on with my grievance? What's going on with this barrier that's, inhibiting my transportation? All of that's available for them online. Plus, you can come in, if you did get those phone calls, you still have the availability to really look at all the details and show, like, okay, well, we've communicated this and we've done that, and okay, we have this out for bid, and for this reason, we're doing something different. So all that information is all completely documented. As information is updated in your system, the information presented to the public is automatically updated. So you're not having to go back in and constantly, re-procure contracts to get your system updated, because it's already updated. It's been updated. Once you're there and you're using the system, you're already automatically able to continue to update that information. The public can only see the information you designate, and if a barrier is remediated, your transition plan is automatically updated. So if they want to see, hey, there was that one curb ramp that I went to that, was a real problem for me, and it was on their transition plan, but I did do a grievance, and I just want to know where it's at. And if you've already fixed it, they can come and they can look right on here and see that issue has already been remediated and it's fixed. So, and then if a grievance is tied to an evaluation, updating one will automatically update the other. So you're not having to go into 3, 4, 5 different areas to try to keep everything updated and work on all these different platforms, because you don't have one central location. With BlueDAG, it's set up to be one central location. So I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, like, well, what do the projects do that my established project tracking software already does? The project information acts as a glue for continued management through to remediation. BlueDAG steps the barrier from identification all the way through to completion. So at any time, you can always look and see exactly what's happened, when it's happened, how it's happened, who's updated it. All of the information is completely there. Each step is documented, so should there be any questions of what you've done, you have all the proof. If you've continued to talk with constituents or engineers or a construction firm, all of that information is completely documented and managed right here in the system. Plus, dependent upon your need and your budget, in most cases, we can pull data right from your established project tracking software to automatically update BlueDAG. so that you don't have to continuously update that as well. That's one more thing that we can take off of your shoulders. So the point is, they all work together. You have a barrier, whether it be programmatic, if it be structural, there's a barrier. And between the transition plan, the projects, the grievances, everything is completely documented. It's all connected, it's all intertwined. So everything is consistently being updated and always being monitored. There's a workflow process that's established within the system so that if you have an assigned date of when something is due, you can come back in, look and see, oh, well, this is due on this day. Where am I at? What do I need to do? It sends you emails. It keeps you notified. It keeps everything moving. You know, what it comes down to with BlueDAG is it was a matter of giving the agencies a tool necessary to continue to remain in compliance. I've heard so many times in so many different ways that we just don't have the resources to keep this up to date and keep this managed. BlueDAG is a system that has been designed to fit the needs of each individual agency from large to small. We want to provide you with the tools you need to be successful in completing these these evaluations, grievances, establishing your transition plan, all of that. But did you know that when an agency gets sued, usually the ADA coordinator is also listed as a plaintiff? BlueDAG provides you the tool to identify and properly manage all of your ADA barriers so that you don't have to worry about being listed personally as in some kind of lawsuit or anything else. It's been designed by subject matter experts. I'm sure a lot of people know of CalCASP. They work closely with the DGS to establish even the questions that are necessary to pass the CASP examination. But they've developed the process and the inspection tool. And it's unlike anything that you've ever seen that meets all of these ADA requirements. So at this point, it's the conclusion of our fourth and final webinar in this series. I really would love anybody that is even remotely interested into seeing what and how it all works together to contact us, to schedule a demo, to really see how it can really benefit you and the positives and the stress relief that it can provide you. At this point, I want to open everything up to questions if anybody has any. All right, so the first question I have is, it talks about transition plans, said that a public entity with 50 or more employees must have a developed transition plan. And if they don't have 50 employees, is there still a need? Well, actually, there is still a need, because if you go back to Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, it states that if you have 15 or more employees and you receive federal funds, you have to comply with those regulations, which states that you have to have a transition plan. And if you look at the ADA and you look at Title V, it says that the most stringent of laws that apply to the ADA regulations are the ones that apply. So if you have any kind of financial federal assistance from the government, then you are required to have a transition plan, even if you do not have 50 or more employees. And then it says, are dirt trails or hiking paths in public parks considered part of the public right-of-way? It isn't considered part of the public right-of-way, but it is listed under like the parks when you do a site evaluation on a park. There are dirt trails and hiking paths do have specific regulations that are tied to them that require that if any person, like if you have someone who's on a bike who goes through one certain area and there's become a worn path there, that is considered now a public pathway. And so that needs to be available to anyone. So if it's available to one person who has worn down this path on their bike, they're required to now make that path accessible to anyone. Let's see if there's any other questions that anybody may have. Okay, at this point, I don't seem to have any additional questions. I'd like to mention yet again that if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email. I'd be more than happy to provide you any kind of feedback that you may have with regards to the regulations. If I don't have the answer, there are resources available through ada.gov, the Department of Justice, the U.S. Access Board, and I'd be more than happy to reach out to them on your behalf to get answers to any questions you may have. I'd love to have anybody contact us and try to schedule a demo of the product. I think you'd be really pleased and really happy with what it can provide to you. But other than that, I think this closes out our web series. I'm gonna go ahead and hand this back over to Mike.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. It was very informative. I'd like to let everybody know that this was our last episode in this web series. We do have another series planned towards the end of May that will go further in depth into how to use the system and is a little more hands-on. Again, I'd like to thank Lisa, let everybody know that the recording of this web series will be available on our YouTube channel for BlueDAG, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.